All right, so I got a story real quick. Okay, so this is how things are in Eklund's world. Okay, just someone bring this up. So last night, of course, I'm not in Vegas because I took a chance on the trip of this going to Game 7, and I can only really afford to go out west once. So I was planning on going back. I went to Game 3 and 4, and in Washington, I was going to go to Game 6 if there was one. So I'm watching the game. So I'm a little bit like I like to be there when the Cup is won. I've been there all the time. This is the first time I haven't been there when the Cup's won, so that's okay. But it was kind of frustrating. But so I'm sitting there and the game is tied at 3 in overtime when my daughter, whose last day of school before finals is today, comes up to me last night and says, "I left my computer and my bag in my grandfather's car, and he has now driven it to New Jersey, an hour and a half away. I need it for tomorrow morning's classes, or else I will fail my finals." So 3-3 in the third period, and I'm thinking, okay, first of all, you have to hope that they're even up at this point, which they're not. And but I do manage to get my wife's mom luckily finds the text, puts the bag outside, but now I have an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back, and it's midnight. So I'm on my way. I mean, it was kind of interesting. I mean, I listened to all the pregame, all the postgame stuff on XM. They did a great job on XM, and I'm driving around. But yeah, it's just like the things you do for children is just incredible. Like this is I figure I'm owed something now. Like I think that like they should get like dad points out of that, but you don't. That's not how it works. So for the same people, the same in-laws I'm just talking about tonight, they wanted to see. They recently were in Nashville with a trip. These people are almost 80 years old. They're 79 years old. They're in incredible shape. They're in Nashville. They saw a country artist there that they liked a lot, and he happens to be playing in Allentown near me tonight. So, but it's the kind of place. It's like a general admission barn, country music barn, and it's got 250 seats, but they sell 1,000 general admission tickets. And my 80-year-old in-laws are not going to be able to stand for a concert, but they really want to see this. They love this guy. So, what I'm doing after this show. After a little bit, as I'm driving up there to Allentown, I bought 3 tickets for this. I'm going to stand in line ahead of time for the doors at 5:30. Go in and sit down with one other seat, and wait for them to arrive at 7:30. Take my seat and leave and come home. So this is the world of Eklund right now. It's just like literally, it's just a nightmare. Not that anyone cares, but this is how it goes sometimes.
Sure,
it's all fun. Or I thought it would be fun, but it's not. Not funny, at least. I thought it would be more entertaining.
Well, the pre-show thing that Russ and I were going to talk, and we can talk about this more on a future show. It's just like I'm scanning through Twitter a couple days ago, and movie companies are putting previews on YouTube and on Twitter to promote their movies. And we've long talked about how Hollywood is brain dead when it comes up to, their new plot lines. So they just keep rehashing and regurgitating old movies. A friend of mine told me that they're trying to remake The Crow, the Brandon Lee movie, and not a sequel to it, but a reboot of it, the start of it over again. And it's just, the movie's 25 years old. Why would you?
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Why would you do? But this one took the cake. The movie, A Star Is Born. It's been made 3 times. Most recently in the 70s with Chris Christopherson and Barbra Streisand. They're rebooting it again with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. Just shoot me. I mean, come on. Can you come up with some original friggin' ideas?
Please? They don't want to do original. We can't talk about it now. It's going to take too long.
So, I mean, and this, of course, and comic books aren't original either, right? So that's going on. But yeah, something that was last done in the 70s, though. That's pretty long.
Yeah, but it's the same story over.
And they should just make the same movie and just call it something else because they made The Star Is Born. You say they remade it 3 times, but that plot has been made 500,000 times.
Right.
Yeah, I guess.
They're just sapping onto the title for extra publicity,
Yeah.
No question about it, right? All right. Well, we're supposed to be joined by Pete Weber. He's trying to get in here, so as soon as he does, we'll jump on with him as well. But let's start the show for now and get going. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, June 8th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are done the hockey season officially. And it came to and I felt a very emotional ending last night. It was really kind of, it's funny because as much as this was, like I said, it was a hard series to see either team lose in. I always felt that way from the beginning. You don't know who you're really pulling for. Like, I think I was pulling for Vegas to take it to Game 7. When push comes to shove in Game 7, I wasn't sure who I would root for.
I knew who I was pulling for.
Yeah, you were. And Pete. Well, I don't know. I think Mike that you were pulling for Vegas.
I mean,
yeah. Just
I went with the Caps the last 2 rounds. So
you know what? You can thank me because every round I picked against Vegas. And they won, so I picked Vegas this time, and they lost. You know what? There's two. I was very happy for Ovechkin and actually and Ted Leonis. I think those are great guys who have done a lot of good things for hockey, and seeing Ovechkin's emotions and all the stuff that's come out of their night last night in Vegas has been just great, and I'm super happy for all the dumb narratives that it can go away about Ovechkin now. They can just get put to the shelf and be over and done with. Right. But I also, in fairness, I was really looking forward to if Vegas had won, how we could go back and look at the last year, like literally calendar year to like June 22nd, 2017.
Yeah.
And before, and how they built this team and what they were looking for in the deals, and hope that would all come out. And I still hope it does, because I think there is something to really be learned by what happened basically from George McPhee all the way around to Gerard Gallant and everything else. Like, I think there's a story there that I hope someone really goes super in deep with. Yeah,
I really want to see how this team was put together too. I totally agree with you. And I think, I'm one of the few people that thinks that Seattle is going to, it's going to be hard to live up to this, obviously, but I do think
it's impossible.
I do think they're going to be able to put together a contending team right away. And I do feel that.
I don't know. I can't even think about Seattle right this moment.
Yeah, obviously we have to see, but I'm not of the mindset that this is as impressive as this was. I'll tell you what, it felt like a little bit to me, and the most amazing hockey I've ever seen live. With the exception of going back to like the 1987 Stanley Cup Final, when I got to see that Edmonton team play against the Flyers, and that was one of the best teams to ever play. With the exception of that, the best hockey I've seen live was the World Cup of Hockey's under-24 North American team. The way that team played together was just incredible. The speed they played at, and when I watched Vegas live, because I hadn't seen them live until the finals, and I really didn't get a chance, and they didn't play that well in the 2 games I saw them, games 3 and 4. But the first half of the first period of Game 4, I saw what reminded me of that under-24 team, which was the ability to make plays to make speedy plays and speedy passes at an incredible rate, which a lot of young hockey players can do, especially when playing together, and the ability to stick handle faster and quicker than anybody could, in years. And I think that and I really saw something there that I think just is indicative of young players. And when they play together, I think you really see something special. And I think that there was a connection to me from that North American team to this Vegas team, even though, none of those players were good enough to make that team. That North American team, if Matt Murray doesn't get hurt, wins that World Cup of Hockey going away, in my opinion. They were so, and that's how that plays into, you can see how Vegas had their success a little bit when you look at that.
I'm going to tell you, though, the most undercovered story or guy or pictures is really Nick Backstrom.
Yeah.
This is a guy that Nicholas Backstrom is going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He was 4th in his draft class in 2006. He was behind Taves, ahead of Kessel. He is one of the great players of the era. He happens to play with Alex Ovechkin, so nobody talks about him. He played under really amazing circumstances. If you look at his Frankenfinger, it's pretty awful. And he had still had 23 points in 20 games and managed to be very effective in the Stanley Cup when we weren't even sure if he could, do that much.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, nobody talks about this poor guy. I'm sure he's happy. He won the cup and everything else, but it is the most undercovered story of the Stanley Cup.
You're right. It was all Ovechkin, Konechny, Holtby, and Oshie. But right, I think that I don't know if he's just a quieter guy. Necessarily doesn't,
He's a quieter guy. He is.
My favorite. It's a really good point. But my favorite moment with Ovechkin was the Scott Moore interview afterwards, where he, I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it or not, but I got a chance to see it today on YouTube, where Ovechkin talks about, all that he did before the game and how he prayed to his dead relatives for help. And I love that. I was just like, it's just like,
what is this, a seance?
No, we forget sometimes that this guy is from another culture. Like that's not a strange thing for him to say.
No.
And it's just like, and it was a very Russian thing of him to say and to admit to. And I just loved it. I love the fact that he said that. I thought it was the coolest thing. I mean, that was just.
Here's another thing that's floating around today. I heard it on Hockey Central. I don't know why we're hung up on like first round picks that have won the Stanley Cup, first overall picks. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like to me, it's like, why is that a narrative? Why did we have to include now because Ovechkin did it and come out with the list? It's like Kane and LeCavier, and it's like Fleury, and it's like, well, who cares? Like, it's just, there's so much that goes into it. If I'm going to think that every first overall pick is going to win the Stanley Cup, I can't even connect the dots. I can't.
Well, you know what? Now I feel really bad for what's his name, the 99 first overall pick who went before the Sedins.
Oh,
Patrick Stepan.
Patrick Stepan.
Patrick Stepan, yeah.
Doesn't anyone think of him?
No.
No, nobody does. Actually,
but
people in Atlanta might, but that's it.
Alexander Day.
I also want to point something out because it was a hot topic of discussion on this show with this foursome prior to the playoffs beginning. And I believe there was one person who believed the Capitals should start with Grubauer. Russ.
No, we said that, yeah.
And I think the rest of it, they did. But I mean, I know
it's crazy.
Well, the other thing about this is like, and I heard, one of my favorite guys on XM is Boomer Gordon, and he does such a good job. And the other day when
I hear you.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah.
Sorry about this, but guys, I just was not getting an invitation.
No problem.
It's not you, it's Google.
It's we can blame.
And it's probably me too,
all-knowing Google.
Well,
But,
Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me finish this thought, and then I'm going to bring Pete on because I'm driving to Game 4, and I'm listening to XM, and Boomer Gordon comes on. And he says, "You know what I hate is hockey pundits." Like he's like, I hate hockey pundits because where were all these people who are like, oh, this is the greatest Capitals team, and this all this energy and all this stuff. When the Caps were in double overtime of Game 3 of the first round against Columbus, and Panarin hits the post. Like, because as much as
I mean, I thought
the thing about this sport, it's just what this sport is, right? That there's these crazy moments that that dictate everything. And
I gave the Caps a very small chance of beating Pittsburgh, but they did. And once they did, then I believed in them. But before that,
the Caps should send me a Stanley Cup ring because I picked against them every round, and they made me look like a fool every round. So
Toronto will send you a ring when they get around again.
Yeah, okay, I'll hold my breath on that one. Pete, let me just lead Pete into this.
Well, excuse me, I am texting Barry Trotz right now to get you a ring.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Pete wrote
might be sleeping, Pete.
Pete wrote a piece for NHL.com about Barry Trotz, the former Predators coach winning the Stanley Cup. And I'm sure, you have a long relationship with Barry, so it has to fill you with a bit of joy that he finally achieved that level.
Big tear in my eye still when I woke up this morning from that celebration last night. Yes, that was absolutely tremendous. And to even see on the on-ice celebration, Lane Lambert, and how about the Predators' first ever strength coach, Mark Nemeth, who has been with the Capitals for a long time right now. That was great to see those guys celebrating.
It's really fascinating. That's awesome. And I mean, my memory of Barry Trotz will always be the day I came down to Nashville for the season ticket drive, sitting next to him at that table answering phones for like 3 hours.
Yes.
He sat there with us and answered phones, and I had the greatest time talking to him. And he's been wonderful to me ever since. Every time I've seen him ever since then, he's been so nice to me. And so, I mean, it was such a hard thing. Like I wrote the article, how can you root for either of these teams to lose? Because there were so many reasons you wanted both of them to win.
I'll tell you what, he's the only coach that I could think of that ever came on our draft day show that we do live on the draft floor. Barry Trotz came on. Like, I can't think of any other coach that probably would even think of coming on or want to. And he did, because he was just such a good ambassador for the Predators at the time. And
Wait a second, Russ. Michelle Therrien didn't come on your show?
No, he didn't know.
No, it was so funny because he was, the two of them. There was such an interesting dichotomy in Nashville with Poyle and Trotz. For me, and because of both, Poyle just, was like I said, the only GM who wouldn't actually ever give me his phone number ever. There were
a few girls too, but anyhow.
No, but I mean, yes. Sitting down with them for a wonderful half-hour interview where I thought we connected and bonded. I'm like, oh, can I have your? I'll never, because I don't text people unless I'm absolutely, have to. Can I have your text? No. And he's a great guy too. And there's definitely the connection between Poyle and McPhee and Poyle and the Capitals. Yeah. That's all there. So I guess you were pulling for the Caps because of Trotz, right? Yeah.
Without question. And he's in Vegas too. But I have a long-term relationship with Barry Trotz, Lane Lambert, Mitch Korn, and those people there. And when you get down to it, how about Ross Mahoney too, going back to my Buffalo days?
Yeah, I talked about Ross on Sirius this morning. He used to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And when he used to come on our show, I'd say about 2 years, I didn't say a word to him. And then one day I did ask him, what did you do in a previous life? Were you a teacher? And he said yes, because I could just tell by the way he would lay things out. But that team has been so good with scouting and player development. He gets a lot of credit.
Well, say about Barry to me, and you can back me up on this, Pete, is like the thing that was amazing about this Capitals team. There were a couple moments during the playoffs that epitomized Barry Trotz thing. One was after Game 7 of after the clinching game for the Penguins, which I guess was 6, right? He came on and said, I knew we were going to win all along today. I just knew it. I just had a feeling. I woke up and it just, the team, everybody was, and the fact that he kept focusing on how calm everybody was, how calm this team was, that was because of him. Like, he's thinking back, like, this is an emotional team. This is a team of people I talked about all the time that get too high and too low. That's what this team is.
Well, Trotzy is a great student of John Wooden and his philosophy. Mm-hmm. And we might have seen John Wooden with his program or scorecard or whatever it was rolled up on the sideline and things that other people would consider mild, but for him were profane. But John Wooden said he always had to look calm because if he wasn't, how could his team possibly be?
Right.
And that's what he wanted to achieve.
Well, Pete, let me ask you this question, and then I had something about the Capitals that I wanted to express. But Brian McClellan was asked right after the game, like in the locker room, about Barry Trotz's future with the Capitals. There's been a lot of talk about him going someplace else, and it was very cryptic because he said, well, if he wants to be back, he'll be back. So basically he hit the tennis ball onto Barry Trotz's side of the court. And now if he decides that he wants to go someplace else, it's going to be, quote, his fault, unquote, or his choice, unquote. What do you think?
I like the choice of fault there. I like the choice of the word fault with the tennis analogy going after that. I reading Barry and what he said immediately in the aftermath of the game about that situation, it seems he is going to be open to talking about it. I don't know if he'll be open to accepting it yet. Yeah. He said, give me a few days to try to absorb all of this. I know he has a daughter in Hawaii later on this summer. So that's of some concern to him also. Wants to make sure all of that is straight. I don't think that if he were to turn it down, he'd be out of work for very long. Only one.
Yeah, no.
But if he becomes available, might some other opening not be created as well? So that's very, very curious. This to me, I grew up a St. Louis Cardinals fan. And this to me sounds like the beginnings of what happened in 1964. Johnny Keane resigned after they won that World Series because he knew Gussie Busch was trying to fire him middle of the summer when he did fire his general manager. Gussie Busch did. And he was a guy named Branch Rickey who was trying to bring Leo DeRocher into St. Louis and rekindle his managerial career at that point. It took a few more years before he went to the Cubs, and he said, this is not a ninth place team. And he was correct. They were 10th the next year. But this was, it almost seems like if there is some ill feeling there, this is the sort of thing that could happen. But all I can say about that is stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, my impression, and I don't know anything directly, so I mean, but my impression talking to people, because I asked a lot around when I was down there for games 3 and 4, was that he wasn't coming back, and that wasn't out of bad ill or anything like that. Like you said, there's other things, and and he'll never leave in a bad way. There's no possibility. But I think that there was stuff. I think there were disagreements. I think in some player moves and things like that which always happen everywhere.
Yes,
but he also has I really think it was exhausting to keep this team calm. Like I really think that, I think that is an exhausting process. And it was interesting when you hear him talk, because you hear him say, I've had some really good teams over the years. This team bought in, and that was the difference, which is good speak for saying, I've had some really good teams. We all could have won, but this team won.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what any coach is really thinking in that situation, because of like we talk about game 3, Panarin hitting the post on double overtime before a weird goal by Ehlers hits like 4 different things and goes in. But yeah, I did get the impression that he's not coming back. It's just, and I think that the Capitals will be interesting who the Capitals bring in, because that's going to be a really tricky situation.
It would probably be Todd Reardon, I would think. If Trotz moves on, Reardon's been on NHL short lists for a number of teams, so I would think it'll be interesting, though, the domino effect, because the assumption is if he doesn't go back to Washington, that he could follow Paul Fenton to Minnesota, and then that would cost Bruce Boudreau his job. And who are the Islanders going to hire as their coach? We think it's going to be DJ Smith, but nothing has been announced yet. So it could set off a domino effect. But I want to.
He was a UFA, but when he was UFA, when he was away from Nashville, he didn't jump right away.
Right.
He definitely took some time before the Caps job. He definitely thought it through. I think that's what will happen here, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he just sits out the beginning of the season and waits for something to happen.
Maybe, but let me just put this forth, and I want to Peter Tessier. I want you to answer this first, because we know that when teams win Stanley Cups, that the NHL is inherently a copycat league.
Right.
Well, the NHL looks at the Capitals, and this team in a way is a bit of a throwback, because you don't have 6 mobile, great skating defensemen. You've got veteran puck blockers, shot blockers like Orpik and Niskanen. You don't have 12 guys who fly around the ice. You've got big muscular guys hitting people like Devontae Smith-Pelly and Tom Wilson. Peter Tessier, I think this is going to make teams think, okay, well, I've got to find big guys now. I've got to find defensive defensemen.
I don't, Mike, I think the league let's use the term was a copycat league. And I think what we're starting to see now is GMs are becoming a little smarter. They're becoming a little wiser and realizing a prevalence of skill through the lineup is a better way to go for success than trying to have role players and fit them in your roster. I think what happened with Washington is a little bit like what happened with Vegas for the whole season. They kind of caught lightning in a bottle right at the right time, and a lot of things came together. But that being said, they did something no one else did against the Golden Knights. They got in there and messed up the shooting lanes, and we've talked about this before. They blocked shots where no one was getting it, and they kept Vegas from doing what they did so well against the Jets, what they did so well against the Sharks. And that's the biggest difference. So if you want to copy a team based on 10 games or 11 games, or even longer, that's fine. But if you're going to look to build for success, you're going to do it with what the new data says. What you're seeing everyone do is build highly skilled teams based around players that can play perhaps multiple positions up and down the lineup. And yes, you're still going to have guys who have different size, but I don't think anyone's going to run out and say, okay, we got to find another Devontae Smith-Pelly right now because we need that. We need to find a Ryan Reeves in terms of Vegas like that. No. Those guys will always have roles. There'll be a few exceptions, but I don't think we're going to see that anymore.
I don't think we're going to have Eric Vales all over the league.
I thought years ago, more than any other that I can remember, define what the NHL. One of the things that makes me crazy about the NHL, we find out who the best team is in the regular season, in my opinion, because I know that the President's Trophy doesn't mean anything, but we do find out who because the NHL, when you get into the playoffs, it is just an isolated tournament, and Vegas wasn't the second best team in the NHL, but they were the runners up, right? And I heard someone say that on XM today, and I agree with that 100%. The regular season is, to get the most points in the NHL during the regular season, that's an accomplishment and a half. But it doesn't get you anything. No one cares about it, because,
as we learned here,
as you've learned there, and as the Caps have learned. If you want to mimic the Caps, 44 years, it'll take you 44 years and more blown 3-1 series leads than any other team, but you can mimic the Caps. And I say that in all. They really, the Caps. They got incredible goaltending, which is what you always need to win these tournaments. It's about that. To win a tournament, you gotta get the great goaltending, and you gotta get the timely plays. Nashville saw that firsthand. That, and I was a big believer that if Nashville wins Game 7, that they would have taken out Vegas. I really think, because they could do the same thing that the Caps could do, but where Winnipeg was a different kind of team. But
I go back to that Nashville Winnipeg series, and I think everyone expected the winner to easily take out Vegas. I don't think, in hindsight, I don't think anyone really actually understood how ferocious that series was, how the battles in it. It was mean, it was rough, it was fast, and everyone paid a price in it. Those guys were done.
No,
we saw a game, including the broadcasters, Peter. I still have my specs on.
So we saw that in the final game of the Winnipeg Knights series. We saw the effects of the Winnipeg Nashville series. That in the third period, Winnipeg absolutely had nothing left.
Yeah,
and it was shocking. It was surprising, and I felt like in this series, there's one thing that worked against the Vegas Knights was the scheduling of all these off days, because the Vegas Knights will tire you out. But giving every extra off day for every travel, it's not so much a factor, right?
And for the first time in the playoffs, they started to get dinged. You can't say the Capitals had their injury problems with Kuznetsov and Backstrom, but William Karlsson was hurt at the end of that series. They were finally starting to feel the effects of being punished by another team, whereas earlier in the playoffs, they were so fast that there wasn't a ton of contact until the Winnipeg series. I think Winnipeg did an effective job of being physical with them, but then Fleury sort of stood up. Well, just to ask this, Pete, because I thought Nashville was going to win the series against Winnipeg. I thought Nashville was going to go to the Cup final, and now there's a lot of talk now about what the Predators are going to do in the offseason to take that next step in a very competitive Western Conference. And of course, the name of John Tavares is popping up. Whether it happens or not, what do you think of the fit there? If they can fit the cap hit, what do you think the fit of John Tavares in Nashville would be? Would it be a good fit?
It'd be an excellent fit. I don't think there's any question about that. But for some reason, and this just occurred to me the last several days, I'm wondering if John Tavares does not end up in Buffalo, where his uncle has been so successful and still is assistant coach with the Buffalo Bandits. They adore each other, those two. Yeah. And with the tumult, and I can't think of any better word to apply to the Islanders situation right now, and particularly the guy who was his roommate when he got started getting fired as coach earlier this week. I'm wondering if there's any chance in Hades that he does re-sign with the Islanders. And so everybody will have their antenna up.
Yeah, this is going to, it was interesting. And PK did such a great job last night on.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. Yeah. Because whom did he replace? The guy that was on his case in the broadcast last year. Mr. Shoe in the stands at Madison Square Garden. Mike Milbury.
You're right. He did. I didn't even think about that.
Well said, Pete.
PK was so friggin' classy and so on top of it. And, I'm sitting here and my wife's like, my wife, just casual. She's like, PK Subban's doing a great job. She's like, I love that guy. He's so well spoken. He's so professional.
PK did some work for Sportsnet in Canada during the lockout, I believe. Yeah. And everybody and their brother basically said he has a future in broadcasting as soon as he retires.
So she says to me, "Why is he doing this? Does he need the money?" And I'm like, "No."
No.
PK does not need
He's
the
having
money.
fun. Is there a player in the NHL who's taken his career and what he enjoys in life and has as much fun with it as PK Subban? I don't think there is.
I don't either.
No,
But with a possible lower level exception, I'm thinking about Paul Bissonnette now as a broadcaster. He's truly enjoying himself, but it's at a different level. But Subban, I mean, the first tweet I got last night was, how do you, as a veteran broadcaster, feel about PK Subban just walking onto the set and doing a better job than most of you other people without any preparation?
Pete, I'm more jealous of the fact that he's dating Lindsey Vaughn. So that's
not confirmed, Mike.
He has a huge it factor to him, right? He just has it, whatever that is, and that's why some broadcasters work really hard. I mean, Pete Weber does not. Pete Weber has it, but there are some guys out there that don't. PK steps up and he just has it. He just and it's right there. And the fact he could, I loved how he threw in, this is a great city. The only thing that compares to this, Nashville, which is second to none. I love the fact he threw that in there, especially given the fact that, that the day before TSN comes out with his trade bait list and puts him on the list. And and then I was really mad that I chose not to go to this game because I would have loved to have seen PK Subban and Frank Saravelli meet up in the press box.
Yes.
Because there's no way that PK is getting traded. At least that's everybody I've talked to. Pete, have you had any thoughts to that?
I don't think there's any way, no, that he gets traded. But then again, we get surprised all the time. I remember when my phone rang June 29th, a couple of summers ago, and how shocked I was at that point.
Yeah, that is true. But I think that this is even more, feels even more.
Well, I can see PK Subban getting traded, just not by a smart GM like David Poyle.
There you go.
There's other GMs who might do it, but not David Poyle.
I know they've got to make space and all that stuff for their defense, but I think that's this guy's a Norris Trophy candidate, right? Like he's right.
This is the area where I'd be not concerned, but because David Poyle knows what he's doing. But I look at the contractual situation right now, Pete. You've got Ellis as a UFA after next year. You've got Yossi, who could be the most underpaid player in the NHL, making less than $5 million under contract for the next 2 years. So he'd be eligible for an extension after next season.
Yeah.
to my mind, they have to get those two guys signed to extensions because they're.
Please don't overlook Mattias Ekholm.
Yes,
Mattias Ekholm is a huge part of this too.
Yeah, he is. He is.
But didn't he just sign an extension? So I think he's safe for a while.
For a while, exactly.
Right. And I know that
I think out of all the names, Ekholm is the one that doesn't get talked about enough.
Right.
Correct.
Agreed. And to make Tavares happen, if you're gonna go after Tavares, there's something's gonna have to give, right? That's true. But I think that the biggest question mark to talk about with Nashville is unfortunately has to be the goaltending, and I think that's just that, and I think that I don't think it's fair necessarily that that this comes down on Rene because he had an amazing season and an amazing playoffs again, but he is he just every year he gets older and now he's towards the end of his contract too. So
I think one thing I don't think the defense, which is highly touted, I don't think they lived up to the touting.
Yeah,
as it turned out in front of Pekka for a good part of that. How, why, I don't know.
It does feel as if since Weber left to me, that since Shea Weber left,
right?
That they
not myself or Yannick, right?
Not Yannick Weber. There you go.
You say your French summer home, Shea Weber. Since he left, I do get a sense that the defensive responsibility isn't the same. And I do because obviously, and I don't know if that's just when I would watch Shea Weber play live, he would be directing everything out there. Like he was always pointing guys. He's pointing to people. And I don't know. Is there anything to that you think?
Well, he was quite quarterback-like, I think, in that sense, to be certain. But I also think that the differences now are the structure or the approach that Peter Laviolette wants to take, too.
Right.
Like he always said. And this was when the start of the year was underway, and Ryan Ellis was going to be out until around Christmas time because of his off-season surgery. He was concerned about Alexei Emelin not joining in with the attack. And then ultimately he did. And that's what made everything flow for the club in the first half of the season. So I think we've got to take that into account as well.
Well, one more thing about Nashville, Peter, and you know, like I said, I'm in a playoff hockey pool every year, and I went heavy on Predators because I thought the Predators were going to get to the Stanley Cup final. One of the guys I was very disappointed with was Kyle Turris, because Kyle Turris was great in the playoffs for Ottawa last year. You know, matched up against Crosby a lot in the conference final, had a really good playoff for the Sens, and I thought the acquisition of him was going to be, you know, with him and Bonino and Johansson up the middle, I thought that was going to be the key to the Preds making the Stanley Cup final. And Turris did nothing. He really did not do much. Was there an injury there, or did he just not fit in?
I suspected an injury. And as far as not fitting in, we were told there was none. And as far as fitting in, Kevin Fiala probably owes him a year's worth of steak dinners, because Kevin had not scored a goal until Kyle Turris got here. And he really ignited his season. What happened at that point of the playoffs, it's beyond my comprehension anyway.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, some guys just go, you know, some guys become Devont Pelly, Smith Pelly, you know, and some guys don't. I mean,
yeah. I mean, and you know what? And I'll just to say to your point, Pete, like, same salary, same contract.
Yep.
Is Nick Ehlers, and he didn't score a goal in the playoffs.
Right.
But he was hurt, wasn't he?
No, I don't.
There was
think
no
so.
injury. Jeez, wow.
Yeah.
Nikolai Ehlers, he impressed me so much from his first year, because I think every Predators Winnipeg game, he had a minimum of one breakaway. And it was just like everybody else was standing with their skates in Sackcrete or something like that, not able to move at his level.
Now, and I'm not sure what website, it might be Bovada or it might be coming out of Vegas, but the odds to win the Stanley Cup next year were released.
Yeah, I did.
And the Tampa Bay Lightning are the favorites in the league at 9-1. You have four teams listed at 10-1: Boston, Vegas, Winnipeg, and Toronto. You have Nashville and Pittsburgh at 11-1, and the Stanley Cup champion Washington Capitals at 14-1. Let me just say this from the team that I cover.
Yeah.
Vegas must know that Toronto is making lots of changes in the summer, because that's the only thing I can justify at 10-1 odds for the Maple Leafs. If they
being able to bet on that, like Toronto, people are going to bet heavy on Toronto, so that's why.
The odds are low. They're not.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying you think they should be better than 10-1?
I think they should be worse. I think.
But so many people are going to bet on Toronto that they can't risk that. You know what I mean? That the issue is like.
Maybe that's it. Maybe
that's what moves the money.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of people that were in trouble if Vegas won. You know, they had that.
Oh, they got saved some money last night, didn't they?
They really did. I mean, I know somebody who took the buyout at the end of the conference final. Like, you know, he could have won something like $200,000, but he ended up taking like a $50,000 buyout or something like that, which was the smartest thing you could have ever done, right? But you know, although it was pointed out that later, he's like, well, you know, if I had the money, I could have bet on the other team and covered myself even more. But because if you have the money, if you know that, you know, for sure you can actually make that work. But
the interesting thing about these odds is the fact that they have Tampa as 9-1, and Pete, I thought Tampa was coming out of the East.
I did
and
too.
I thought that they loaded up, and I thought the McDonough trade was going to put them over the top. And they fell short in Game 7, and they really didn't play great against the Caps, and they still got to Game 7. So, you know, that's a team that if there is a way for them to improve, Steve Yzerman will find a way. But I don't know. There's something about them that I saw this year in the playoffs that starts to make me question whether they're ever going to get there with the current construct of their team.
Well, the way we're going now this is clear. The Capitals have taught us the message very, very clearly. Do not do anything but make sure you make the playoff field and don't think a thing about home ice advantage.
Right.
There is no advantage to it.
Yep.
No, that's really true. I mean, and especially for this is what I think home ice advantage is. Home ice advantage is a disadvantage to teams that have choked in the past.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything else. That's why the Caps play into that role, because this is a two Presidents Cups and nothing else. Where the team that's on the up and coming, like Nashville was last year, Vegas is this year, home ice advantage matters a lot. But when you're expected to win, that's when home ice advantage can be a problem. And when you make mistakes, it can be a problem. But I mean, Tampa is a very much of a donut team. There's a lot of problems in their second and third lines, and they have and they really, and their defense, they make McDonough, and we all thought they get McDonough. We all think, wow, this team's going to be stacked on defense. Their defense still has holes on it, big time. This
is what drives me nuts about professional sports is the fact that last year I thought the Caps were the best team in the league, and they'd stocked up, and they had Justin Williams, and they got Shattenkirk, and I thought they were better than Pittsburgh, and they didn't show up. And this year they lose Johansson, they lose Shattenkirk, they lose Schmidt, they lose a bunch of players, and then this happens. Pete, it's like the Cardinals in '82. They were not the best team in baseball. No. With Darryl Porter and Ken Oberkfell, and but they won the World Series because they played against Milwaukee, and then 3 years later, I think they were the best team in the league, and they lose to Kansas City.
That was a great series, tough series for me. My boyhood buddy was playing for Kansas City, Jimmy Sundberg, and here he's going against the team I had rooted for from as far back as I can remember, and they win the series. But I'm going to say this for the public record right now: I hold no ill will against Don Denkinger.
Oh, I do.
No, actually, I do. Did I tell you that story, what Whitey Herzog did? In 2015, they had a 30-year anniversary, and he invited everybody back, including Don Denkinger. Denkinger is talking to people, should I accept this invitation? And he was encouraged to do so, so he did.
Well, what happened?
Whitey has a dinner. Whitey has a dinner, and he gives special gifts to everybody. Don Denkinger is called up, and he's given this little box, and it turns out to be a watch in Braille.
Yes.
Denkinger, because I mean, most of us would.
Denkinger, Todd Worrell goes over. Yes. George Jorda, a little infield bouncer on the right side. Worrell got the throw, got the foot down, but he was still called safe by first base umpire Don Denkinger.
Yeah,
and that's why Cardinals fans will never forget that name. Kind of like Brooklyn fans won't forget the name O'Malley
or Kerry Fraser with the Leafs. I mean,
basically with the Flyers. There you go. So there you have that.
Basically, if there was instant replay in 1985, it would have been an out. And Pete, just as an aside, I have a problem with Whitey Herzog taking out Ken Daly and after striking out the side in the 8th inning. That was the big question mark with me. But that's the thing. It's like these little things that lead to. Lead to victories and then lead to losses.
Baseball and
sorry,
no, just.
But there's a guy here in Nashville, John McNamara, who was managing the Red Sox. Yes. He elected to leave because he wanted him on the field, Bill Buckner, when they would win the World Series, and not put Dave Stapleton in at first base. When I saw John a few months ago, he said, "Thank you for not asking me again about not inserting Dave Stapleton."
Yeah, which he did.
When the Buckner thing went down, I can't tell you what happened, except for it was probably the most illegal thing I've ever done in my life was happening at that moment of the Buckner play.
Were you smuggling drugs or something?
Never say.
No, it was insider trading. Insider trading. I
never say what was happening. It had nothing to do with money. but it was definitely dicey. All right.
That'll be a nice blog coming up later, everybody.
Yeah. As Declan reveals his checkered past, which was so boring, except for that moment, which was really interesting. Anyway, so we'll just leave it there. Where to go from there?
Well, one thing, because you mentioned Tavares and you mentioned Buffalo. I mean, the one thing that's been floated here, Pete, and everybody else can talk about this as well, is, and it's been Chris Johnston from Sportsnet mentioned it a couple months ago, and I think it's not an implausible idea. Is the 1 year max deal? If Tavares, a team like Toronto, and I'm using them as an example, Toronto's got 22 or 23 million in cap space for next year. It's just after next year they run into cap problems. I don't think the NHLPA would have a problem with John Tavares saying, okay, I'm going to go to Toronto for 1 year and get paid 20%, meaning 16 million if the cap goes up to 80. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. And why, all the risk is on Tavares' side here, because if he gets hurt, then it hurts him. But I don't see that as an impossibility.
No, I don't either. And the other thing, Peter, I wonder about this. If Stastny is not going to be re-signed by the Jets, how about Tavares there?
They couldn't do it. They just
No
don't
room?
have the room.
Okay.
It just won't work. You've got Trouba, Hellebuck, Morrissey coming up for new deals. Ehlers kicks in. Littles kicks in. Wheeler's due next year. So is Line.
Okay.
So is Kyle Connor. Like it's a dream. I still think the Canucks are going to come in and try and do something. I still have a belief that the Canucks are going to try and come in and get Tavares, and Jim Benning's been awfully quiet, other than apparently dangling his seventh overall pick to people.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to come in and try and make an offer and make a play for him. I don't think they'll be successful, but I think they will.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, they definitely have the money to do something major. I think they could actually. I've heard, now that John Carlson's done, I've heard them mention with John Carlson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's the last thing I'm going to talk about is Vegas and what the heck they're going to do, because they are. I wrote today. Where are you? Are you a team that you had this weird situation where you're a very interesting team for players to come to right now. Everybody, it's not going to be hard to sell your team.
Right.
You have $35 million in cap space. You have, they could go out and sign. They could get Tavares and Carlson if they wanted to.
Yep.
Also there's a lot of people who think that in a Nick Menino type way, John Carlson could end up playing for the team that he beat in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yes.
And that's possible too. But yet at the same time, you've got this great chemistry. You've got James Neal, who has become a leader, which I never thought I would say, but he became a leader in that locker room. And he, but it seems as if he's not coming back. Like, that's the feeling around, where for a long time it felt like he was going to go back. And now, this is such a, this might be more difficult than George McPhee what he had to do last summer. To be honest, this is like, what direction do you go in? Do you take a shot, or do you just continue on course? Well,
for lack of a better term, I think they're playing with house money. So I think that if knowing their ownership and how aggressive they are, I think they're going to try to trade for Erik Karlsson before July 1st. And if that falls through, they're going to go hot and heavy after John Carlson, because they have that cap space. Now, I think they're going to save some of that cap space to sign some of the players that they already have. They're going to want to extend Nate Schmidt. They're probably going to want to extend William Karlsson, but I think they're going to be players in Tavares if Tavares gets to market, and I think they're going to be players on John Carlson, and that is not good news for some NHL teams, even with the cap going up as much as $5 million, because the Vegas has got so much cap room they can drive the prices up and outprice other teams.
How many times is Mike Emmerich going to have to say Carlson, no relation?
It's different spelling. Come on.
I know, but just phonetically, that's all we hear.
That's
the funniest thing. I turned my wife on to the Got the Glass drinking game this year, which is a fun one to play.
I don't know that one.
I don't know if I want to know.
Doc Emmerich. Doc Emmerich's Got the Glass. That's one of his sayings.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Where my kids, they play the verb game with him. They love to, because he has the largest vocabulary of verbs of anybody.
We had a drinking game here.
Okay.
On the Predators broadcast. Every time Terry Crisp referred to me on the air as Bubba, people were supposed to chug. Well, one night I got a text at the start of the second period. All right, already. Tell him to stop. I'm hammered.
Excellent. I love that. Oh, that's phenomenal. That's great. So I don't know. I don't know what to think of where Vegas is going to go on this. And I also got to stop calling them Nashville, because I was. It's so funny because the Nashville Knights are still in my head from
yes.
I cannot stop calling Vegas Nashville.
I have the same problem with the Toronto arenas. They haven't been around in 100 years, and I still can't get it.
It's bizarre. Anyway.
It's 2:00. We got to end the show.
Yep, we got to go. Thanks so much, Peter and Pete.
My
Glad
pleasure.
to do it. Both Peters are very happy to have joined in.
We appreciate it so much. Have a great weekend, everyone. rumors are going to kick in now, and I'm trying to give like I've got some capital stuff that I'm going to write about. I like to usually give like until after the parade to like.
As I say, the real season begins now.
The season begins now, so I'm trying not to I'm trying to stay up. It just feels wrong to go with John Carlson rumors right off the bat. Let them have a parade at least. But it's amazing. It's 23 days until July 1st, so a week less until the draft. I mean, it's the craziness of how quickly these teams have to make these decisions. It's just they get off the parade route and they've got to be on the phones right away.
That's right. This is a 365-day-a-year job now.
There's no question about that.
There's no off season.
Yep, none at all. And especially this summer, because I think you're going to have a lot of stuff going into August. I really do. I think you're going to have less players signing right away than at July 1st than we've had in years. Because there are so many moving parts, and because of the variable of Vegas,
and because this isn't a particularly strong free agent class. It's top heavy with Carlson and Tavares, and then you have a lot of Stastny and a couple other guys, and then really I think it's going to be teams looking for bargains and holding off and looking for 2-year, 3-year deals and reasonable money. So that it's probably going to last a while.
But there's also teams looking, and that's the last thing I'll say. We do have to go, but there also are teams going to be looking out there at players like we talked about, like the Capitals, like Alex Chason type players.
Yep,
who are guys who basically make up the Vegas Knights. And those kind of players do exist out there. And they can be gotten. All the players on the Vegas Knights could have been gotten before before. So I think that you're going to see a lot of those kind of players, and that's going to change. That's going to change because they can get them for cheap, and they can make a huge impact. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy, crazy summer.
One last thing, if I may, I would just like to extend a salute to my friend Joe Bowen for winning the Foster Hewitt Award. And November 12th, he will be enshrined at that luncheon there. So I think that's absolutely great.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was very happy to hear that, Pete. It was, because I've been listening to Joe for, since 1984, 85, and he's one of the best announcers out there and a great guy. So I was very happy to hear it.
And his first partner, my buddy Brad Selwood.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Wow, excellent. Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Remember that the buzz is just hockey. We'll talk to you on Monday.